I wasn't born yesterday. That's what I told myself as I stared at the credit card statement sitting on my kitchen table. The one with all those strange charges I didn't recognize. It wasn't the amount that bothered me at first. 20 here or 40 there? Just enough to fly under the radar. But something about it made the hair on my arms stand up, like when birds stop singing in the trees and everything goes quiet. I knew someone was trying to be slick with me. It was a Wednesday. I remember because it was laundry day and the sweet tea pitcher was still half full in the fridge. I had the radio playing old gospel music like I always do. Sat down with my glasses on and a pencil in my hand, circling the transactions that made no sense. One said MetaPays. I'd never heard of such a thing. And I certainly wasn't ordering anything online at 2 in the morning. My sleeping pills knocked me out by 9:30 sharp. My name is Margaret Carter, but most folks call me Miss Maggie, especially around town. I'm 67 years old and have lived in the same house for nearly 4 decades. It's not fancy, but it's mine. Paid off from brick to roof and tidy like a pastor's wife on Sunday morning. I worked most of my life as a school administrator. I was the one who kept the books, sorted the payroll, handled the difficult parents, and made sure no money ever went missing. Not on my watch. I raised 2 sons and helped raise 3 grandkids. And let me tell you something, I can smell when someone's trying to get slick with numbers from a mile away. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? I read every single comment, even if my arthritis makes it take a while. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. It helps me know I'm not just talking to myself here. The first person I thought about was Jason. My oldest grandson. 23 years old, smart when he wants to be, charming to a fault, and always running after some new idea that's going to make him rich. When he was in middle school, he sold candy bars out of his backpack until the principal called me in. When he got to college, he dropped out after 2 semesters because, as he put it, the world was moving too fast for lectures. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. I remember smiling and nodding and praying at night that he wouldn't end up on the 6 o'clock news. Jason has always had a little flash in him. Always bragging about crypto, about business deals, about a house he was going to buy soon. Said it was new construction over on Belmore Drive. Corner lot, 3 bedrooms, all modern. He told me he had it locked down, just waiting for the financing to come through. Said he was documenting the journey for his followers on TikTok. I nodded and smiled and told him I was proud, but I didn't say much else. Something about those charges on my card, something about the timing. It felt close to home. Too close. I called the bank. Spoke to a young man named Jordan who sounded polite but quick, like he had better things to do than talk to an old woman. Said he'd freeze the card and send me a new one. When I asked him where the purchases had shipped to, he hesitated for a moment. Then he said the address. It was familiar. My address. My own address. I thanked him and hung up the phone, my hand shaking just a little. The next day I got a text from Jason. Hey Grandma, if the bank calls just say you approved the stuff. They trippin'. No explanation. No apology. Just instructions. Like I work for him. Like I was some fool who jumped when he said jump. I stared at that message for a good long minute. Sat down at the kitchen table and read it again as if maybe I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. He was telling me to lie. To cover for him. And he didn't even say please. Didn't even have the decency to pick up the phone and explain himself. If you're still listening, let me know. Type, I'm here in the comments. Because what I'm about to tell you next is where this story really begins. My first instinct was to call his mama. I had half a mind to march down to wherever he was staying and knock some sense into him myself. But I took a breath. Then another. Then I turned off my phone and pulled out my old notebook. The one I keep under the bread machine. The one with passwords and notes and phone numbers written in my best penmanship. I flipped to the page marked L. That stood for Lydia Moss, my attorney, my friend, the woman who helped me manage my estate after Harold passed away 5 years ago. Lydia never asks too many questions. She always gives me facts straight and clean, and she knows how to move quiet when quiet is what's needed. I called her, told her everything. The charges, the card, the text, the way Jason had been parading around online talking about some house he was going to buy. I told her how he hadn't asked, hadn't apologized, hadn't even seemed ashamed. She didn't interrupt. Just listened with that steady breathing of hers. Then she said in that voice that sounds like warm honey over steel, Maggie, let's handle this smart. Not loud. Smart. She told me we could freeze everything, flag the fraud, report it properly. But then she paused and said something that made me sit up straighter in my chair. You said he's looking at a house on Belmore Drive? Yes, I said. That's the one he keeps bragging about. She went quiet for a moment. I could hear papers shuffling. I have a client who's selling one on that street. A cash buyer could lock it down quick. If you wanted to send a message. I sat there in the quiet, holding the phone to my ear, and something settled in my chest. Not anger. Not revenge. Clarity. That boy needed to learn. Not from yelling, not from fighting. From silence. From reality. From understanding that the world doesn't owe you anything just because you smile pretty and post videos. Do it, I told Lydia. And I pulled out my checkbook. Would you have done the same? Or would you have let it slide? Right, Granny was right if you think I made the right choice. Right, too harsh if you think I went too far. Be honest with me. The next few days moved fast. Lydia sent over papers. I signed transferred funds, put everything in the name of a quiet little LLC she set up for me. Nothing flashy, just clean and invisible. And all the while Jason kept posting. Posing out front of that half-finished house like he already owned it. Talking about granite countertops and smart fridges and floor-to-ceiling windows. Taylor, his girlfriend, filmed videos in front of the garage and tagged it, our dream home. I watched every post with a quiet smile. He had no idea. None at all. But he would. Not because I was angry, but because I loved him. And because love, real love, doesn't always feel warm. Sometimes it feels like a locked door and a deed with someone else's name on it. The day after I signed the papers, I made a pound cake. Not because I was celebrating. Just because it helped me think. I sifted the flour slowly, watching it fall like soft rain into the bowl. That's how I like to move. Quiet and measured. Not everything needs to be a storm. Sometimes all you need is steady hands and a little heat, and the truth will rise on its own. Jason didn't call that weak. But he posted. Lord, did he post. He shared a video of himself walking through the house with a big grin on his face, pointing at empty corners like he could already see furniture there. Where the pool table's going, he said, laughing. Taylor followed behind, filming him with her phone and saying things like, we're so close, y'all. Can't believe we manifested this. The caption said, closing soon. Big wins only. I watched it with one hand wrapped around my teacup and the other resting on the deed Lydia had couriered to my front door. The deed with my name on it. Clear as day. He was dreaming out loud for all the world to see, bragging about a house that didn't belong to him. A house that now legally belonged to me. And I still hadn't told him. Not yet. I didn't want to humiliate him. That's not what this was about. It was about teaching him something the world hadn't. Consequences. I raised that boy better than this. I don't know what the world filled his head with since he left for college. Fast money, fast women, fast fame. But somewhere along the line, he forgot who taught him how to hold a spoon. Who stayed up with him through fevers that wouldn't break. Who took on a second job so his mama could finish nursing school. He forgot. But I hadn't. And now he was going to remember. On Friday afternoon, he finally called. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey Grandma, he said, too cheerful. You got a minute? Yes, I said. Kept my voice steady like still water. Cool, cool, he said, dragging the words out. Listen, small thing. My bank's been acting weird. Think there's some fraud alert on my name. Not sure why. Can't access my accounts. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch between us like a tightrope. And he added, the mortgage people hit me with some weird notice. Said my co-signing info came back flagged. Still, I said nothing. He laughed nervously. Anyway, it's probably just a glitch. You know how tech is. But I figured since it was your card that got mixed up before, maybe if you just called the bank and let them know everything's cool, they could speed things up. I waited one long second. Then I said, come by the house tomorrow. We'll talk about it then. He hesitated. Yeah, sure. I can do that. I hung up before he could say anything else. That night, I didn't sleep much. I laid in bed with my hand resting on my chest, feeling the rhythm of my own heart. It wasn't anger I felt. It was grief. Grief for the version of him I used to know. Grief for the trust he'd trampled on like it was nothing. Grief for the part of myself that wondered if this was somehow my fault. But underneath the grief was something stronger. Resolve. If you've ever had family break your trust, drop a heart in the comments. If you've never experienced that kind of betrayal, consider yourself blessed and right blessed. The next morning, I set out 2 chairs on the porch and made fresh lemonade. Not the powder kind. Real lemons, real sugar, real time. It was sunny, quiet, the kind of morning that made you believe the world could still be good if people just slowed down and listened to each other. He showed up around 11 wearing a t-shirt that said CEO in gold letters and sunglasses he didn't need. I didn't comment on either. I just pointed to the empty chair and said sit. He did, folding his arms across his chest like he was preparing for a scolding. I didn't scold. I asked, why didn't you ask? He blinked. Ask what? Before using my card. Before opening a second one in my name. He shifted in his seat. I was going to tell you. I just needed to get things moving. That's not what I asked. He didn't answer. So I leaned forward and said, what you did was theft. And then you lied to cover it. And then you tried to involve me in the lie. He threw his hands up. Hey, look, it wasn't that serious. I was going to pay it back. With what money? He paused. The kind of pause that tells you someone's realizing they don't have a good answer. You don't have a job, Jason. You got followers, not income. And even if you had money, you still didn't ask. He looked away, out at the street where a neighbor was watering their garden. I didn't think it'd be a big deal. You always say you're fine. I am fine, I said. Because I don't spend what I don't have. He went quiet. I stood up and went inside. Came back with an envelope. Inside was a printout of the deed. The one with my name on it. I handed it to him without a word. What's this? He asked. That house you've been posting about? It's mine. His eyes scanned the page. Then again. Then again. His mouth opened but no words came out. He looked like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed. I saw the listing. I knew the seller. I made an offer in cash 2 weeks ago. He looked up at me like I'd slapped him. But, why? Why would you do that? I sat back down, took a sip of my lemonade. Because I needed you to understand something. You think the world owes you things just because you dream about them. But the world doesn't run on dreams, Jason. It runs on trust. You broke that. His jaw clenched. So what? This is punishment. No, I said softly. This is a lesson. When you clearly weren't going to learn any other way. He held the paper like it was burning his hands. I let the silence stretch between us like taffy. Then I added, you're lucky I still love you. If I didn't, you'd be learning this lesson in court. He swallowed hard. So what happens now? I looked out at the street, then back at him. That depends on you. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who thinks they can take advantage of the people who love them. Let them know that grandmothers aren't fools. We see everything. We remember everything. And sometimes we teach lessons that last a lifetime. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just sat there with that piece of paper in his hand like it had burned through the skin and settled in the bone. He kept looking at the name on the deed. Mine. And shaking his head like it would change if he stared long enough. I didn't rush him. Sometimes silence teaches louder than shouting ever could. He finally asked without looking up, so you really bought the house? I nodded once. He leaned back and blinked at the sky. That was supposed to be my dream. I told everyone. I filmed everything. I already posted the walkthrough. I sipped my lemonade and said nothing. You could have just told me, Grandma. You didn't have to go behind my back. That made me look up. Set my glass down with a little more force than necessary. Behind your back? I asked, raising one eyebrow. You mean like how you used my credit card without permission? Or applied for a new one in my name? He looked like he wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. So instead he ran his hands over his face and muttered, this is a nightmare. No, I said calmly. This is the result of your choices. He stood up and paced the porch like the truth was something he could walk away from. What am I supposed to tell Taylor? My friends? Everybody thinks I own that place. I posted the floor plans. The inspection day. Everything. I looked at him and saw not just the young man he was now, but the boy I used to carry on my hip. The one who used to sneak cookies from the jar and run off giggling. The one who used to fall asleep on my lap during thunderstorms. That boy would have cried and told the truth. But this man in front of me, he was worried about followers. He sat back down hard, the chair creaking under his weight. Dropped his head into his hands. I messed up, he whispered. I really messed up. Now we were getting somewhere. I leaned forward. Yes, you did. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. I didn't think it would snowball like this. I just needed to show people I was doing something with my life. You don't prove your worth by pretending, I said. You prove it by being honest. By keeping your word. By asking, not taking. He shook his head. But people don't care about that. Online, you got to show success or nobody takes you seriously. Then maybe stop living online, I said. Try showing up in the real world instead. That hit him. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped. He sat back and stared at nothing for a while. Then he asked quietly, "Are you going to sell it?" "The house." I studied his face. "I haven't decided." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. He just kept folding and unfolding the edge of the deed paper like it was the only thing keeping his hands from shaking. After a moment, I added, "There's something else you need to know." He looked up again, wary now. I reported the fraud. His face dropped like I'd pulled the floor out from under him. "I didn't press charges," I added quickly. "But the bank knows. There's a freeze on your accounts until they finish their internal investigation." His shoulders slumped forward. "That means no new credit lines, no account activity, and your score." I shook my head. "It'll take years to fix." He whispered, "Grandma, I told you," I said. "This isn't punishment. This is protection. You don't get to burn the house down and then ask for another match." He swallowed and looked down at his hands. We sat in silence for a moment. Just the two of us and the weight of what had happened between us. I softened my tone. "You're still my grandson. I still love you. That hasn't changed. But love doesn't mean covering for you while you dig yourself into a hole. Sometimes love looks like telling the truth to your face and letting you feel every inch of it. If you think tough love is real love, type amen in the comments. If you think I should have been softer, tell me why. I want to know what you would have done." We sat in silence again. The lemonade glasses were sweating in the heat. A car drove by playing music too loud. Life going on around us while we sat still in our little bubble of reckoning. Then he asked, "So what now? What do I do?" I looked at him carefully. Really looked at him. "You start over. You get a job. A real one. You stop pretending. You build something honest. And when you're ready, you come back here and show me that boy I raised." He nodded slowly. Not the kind of nod you give when you're trying to make someone happy. The kind that means you're finally starting to accept something you've been running from. "I can help," I said. "But not the way you want." He looked at me confused. "I bought the house. It's in my name. But it's empty. And it needs someone to maintain it. Yard work. Basic cleaning. Monthly reports." I paused. "I need someone I can trust." "You want me to work for you?" he asked. "I want you to learn what it takes to earn the things you brag about," I said. He stared at me for a long time. Then for the first time in months, he said something I hadn't heard in far too long. "I'm sorry. I let that hang between us. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start." I reached over and handed him a set of keys. Not to the house. To the mower in my shed. Because he wasn't ready for doors yet. He needed to start with grass. And if he could handle that, maybe, just maybe, one day I'd hand him something more. But not yet. Not until I knew he could be trusted with more than a credit card and a dream. I wasn't expecting a miracle. Let me make that clear. I've been around long enough to know that young men don't change just because you hand them a rake and a reality check. But I do believe in effort. I believe that when people are truly sorry, they don't just say it. They show it. One day at a time. Jason showed up the next morning at 8 sharp. Hoodie on, baseball cap pulled low, hands in his pockets. Didn't say much, but I could tell he was trying to look less cocky. More humble. I didn't welcome him with hugs or second chances. I handed him a list. Mow the lawn. Clean the gutters. Clear the flower beds. Bag the leaves. He looked at it, nodded once, and got to work. No complaints. No eye rolling. Just silence. The kind that lets you know someone's finally starting to sit with themselves. I watched him from the window like I used to when he was a boy. Back when he'd run barefoot through the grass trying to catch lightning bugs in a jar. There was something different in him now. Not broken, but slowed. Like maybe, just maybe, something had finally stuck. I made him a sandwich around noon. Ham and cheese on white bread, little mustard, nothing fancy. Set it on a plate with some chips and brought it out to the porch. I didn't call his name. Just left it on the step and went back inside. He came up 5 minutes later, picked up the plate, and said a quiet, "Thank you." It was the first full sentence he'd said that day. He came back the next morning. And the one after that. 3 days in a row. Same routine. Showed up early, worked quiet, ate his lunch, left without lingering. By the end of the first week, I noticed he'd stopped wearing that flashy chain. The one he used to tuck into his shirt like it was subtle, even though it always caught the light just right whenever a camera turned on. Now it was gone. And so was the phone in his hand. I didn't see him post a single video. No selfies in front of the house. No hashtags about grinding or manifesting or winning. Just work. He swept the walkway, repaired a broken panel in the fence, even scrubbed down the old mailbox with steel wool and vinegar I'd left out. He didn't ask for praise. And I didn't offer it. We had an understanding now. He'd broken something between us, and this was how he was going to earn back the right to speak on it. Like and subscribe if you believe people can change. Comment second chances if you think everyone deserves one. Or write once a thief if you think I'm wasting my time. I read everything, even when it stings. Toward the end of the second week, he came to the door with a small envelope. Handed it to me like it weighed more than it did. Inside was a folded stack of 20s. $200 in all. It's not everything, he said, eyes down. But it's a start. For the stuff I charged on your card. I looked at the money, then looked at him. It's not about the money, Jason, I said. He nodded. I know. But I want you to have it anyway. I didn't count it. I didn't need to. I just placed it on the counter and asked if he wanted some tea. He said yes. We sat on the porch sipping peach tea in the quiet. The sun was starting to dip below the trees, casting long shadows across the grass he just finished cutting. For a moment, it almost felt like old times. Almost. He broke the quiet first. I didn't realize how far I'd gone, he said. Until you showed me. I didn't respond. I wanted to hear what came next. I thought if I just looked successful, eventually it would be real. You know? Like if I played the part long enough, the world would catch up. I set my teacup down gently. You were trying to plant fruit without ever watering the roots. He blinked at me, then smiled. Just a little. Yeah. That's exactly it. I turned to him and said, Jason, life's not a highlight reel. You can't skip the work and expect the rewards. That house? It wasn't about the house. It was about the principle. You wanted to build a future on someone else's foundation. That's not how it works. He nodded slowly, like the words were finally reaching a place in him that had been locked up for too long. I want to fix it, he said. I don't know how. Not all the way. But I want to. That was the first time he'd said something that sounded less like a speech and more like a decision. Later that evening, after he'd left, I called Lydia. We hadn't spoken in a few days and she was curious for an update. He's working, I told her. Showing up on time. Earning his meals. And how's his attitude, she asked. Less mouth. More listening? She laughed. That's a good start. Then she said something that made me pause. You know, Maggie, if you're open to it, we can draw up a conditional transfer. Something in writing. Nothing guaranteed, but a path. Something that shows him this isn't about holding power over him. It's about giving him a reason to keep going. I thought about that long after we hung up. I slept on it, prayed on it, and waited for one more sign. It came 2 mornings later. Jason showed up with a bucket of paint, completely unprompted. Said he'd noticed the back fence was starting to peel and figured it was time it got cleaned up. He didn't ask for money. Didn't even ask for help. Just said he wanted to make something look right again. That was the sign I needed. The next day, I sat him down at the same kitchen table where I'd first found that fraud charge. The same table where his mama had done her homework when she was young. The same one his granddaddy had built with his own hands back in 1972. I handed him a manila envelope. He opened it slowly, careful, like he was afraid of what might be inside. It was a document Lydia had drawn up. A conditional transfer agreement. If he kept showing up. If he worked steadily. If he continued to pay back the debt. If he made it 1 full year without another incident. Then I would hand him the deed. He looked at me wide-eyed. You do that? For me. I do that for the young man I believe you can still become, I said. Not for the one who used my name. For the one who's willing to rebuild his own. He didn't cry, but his hand shook when he folded the paper and tucked it into his jacket. He stood to leave, then turned back toward me. I won't let you down. I gave him a look that made him pause. Don't say it. Show it. Drop a fire emoji if you felt that in your chest. Right, show, don't tell if you know what I mean. Some lessons you can't learn from words. You got to live them. Some mornings I still woke up angry. Not loud, shaking angry. Just quiet heat in the chest. The kind that sits with you while you're stirring your coffee, reminding you that even the people you love most are still capable of disappointing you. I wasn't mad that Jason had used me. I was mad that he thought I wouldn't notice. That's what stung the most. Like I was just some old woman he could reach past without consequence. Like I didn't have eyes or memory or pride. But then he'd show up. Same time every day. Rain or shine. Sometimes even before I was up. I'd find him sweeping the porch or trimming the hedges or taking out the trash without being asked. One morning I found him reorganizing my garage. Every shelf labeled. Tools cleaned and oiled. He said he figured it was time I had some order in there again. That's when I knew. The boy was serious. Still, I made no promises. That was the rule. You don't earn trust back with one good week or even one good month. You earn it by showing up on the days when no one's clapping, when no one's watching, when it would be easier to quit. One afternoon I was flipping through the mail when I noticed an envelope with Jason's handwriting on it. Inside was a receipt. He'd made another payment toward what he owed me. $50 this time. Along with a note that just said, "Still counting." I smiled, folded it carefully, placed it in the same tin where I'd kept his first letter. He didn't know I was saving them. Didn't know I printed out screenshots of his old apology text. His first bank refund notice. Even the first photo he'd deleted from his TikTok when he stopped bragging about the house. Not for revenge. For record. Because when this was over, he wasn't just going to see what he'd taken. He was going to see everything he'd given back. Later that week I got a call from one of my neighbors, Miss Lauren. The one who always has binoculars on her porch like she's running a neighborhood surveillance program. "Maggie," she said, "I don't mean to be nosy, but your grandson. That boy's been over there every day. I see him sweating like a sinner outside the church. What's he doing?" I laughed. "He's learning how to grow up." "Well," she said, "he's doing it mighty quiet." I like that. So did I. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to teach someone a hard lesson? Did they learn? Or did they go right back to their old ways? I want to hear your stories. I hadn't forgotten everything. Just because the hurt wasn't fresh didn't mean it had healed completely. Trust is like fine china. Once it's cracked, you can glue it back together, but you'll always see the lines. That's when Lydia called. She was checking in, asking how I felt about everything. If I wanted to update the trust documents. Schedule a meeting. Start moving forward. Not yet, I told her. Why not? She asked. He's working. He's paying. You've made progress. I stirred my tea, watching the honey swirl. Progress is one thing. Stability is another. You think he might relapse? I don't know what I think, I said. But I know what I'm not ready for. She respected that. Good lawyers always do. A few days later, Jason came to me with an idea. "Grandma," he said, "I was thinking about fixing up the old shed." I raised an eyebrow. Fixing it into what? A workspace. For small projects. Like furniture refinishing. Maybe tech repairs. I've been watching videos. Learning. I stared at him for a beat, waiting to see if this was another shiny idea or something grounded. Then he said, "I figured if I can learn how to mess things up, I can learn how to build something too." That was the right answer. I told him I'd match half the cost. He'd have to earn the rest. The next week, he cleared out the entire shed. Cleaned it. Painted it. Installed new shelving. He turned it into something real. Something functional. And he didn't post a single photo. Just worked. He found a job too. Part-time at the hardware store down on Maple Street. Nothing glamorous. But I knew from experience there's nothing more humbling than working near the very tools that fix what you broke. He came home smelling like paint thinner and cedar dust. I liked it. It was honest work. The kind that leaves marks on your hands and peace in your chest. One day he sat with me on the porch and said something that surprised me. "I don't think I want to move into that house right away. Not even if I earn it." "Why?" I asked. "I think I want to help fix up the one across the street first. Old Miss Reba's place." "Why?" I asked again. He shrugged. "Because it's the right thing. And I owe this street some good work." That night, I went into my bedroom, pulled out the trust folder, and placed a sticky note on the front that read, "Review with Lydia." He might be ready. Not because he was perfect, but because he was trying when no one was watching. Because the world doesn't always give you a reward when you behave. Sometimes all you get is peace. And peace is enough. One evening after a long day of work, Jason sat across from me with dirt on his jeans and a Band-Aid on his knuckle. He handed me another envelope. Inside wasn't money this time. It was a hand-drawn sketch of the house. The one I owned. The one he'd once tried to take through lies. Only now it had a new coat of paint. A garden in front. Flower boxes under the windows. His name and mine etched quietly in the corner. Not bold. Just tucked in like a signature. "I wanted to show you what I see now," he said. And for the first time in months I let him hug me. Not because he'd earned the house. But because he'd earned a piece of my trust back. And sometimes that's even harder to get. Share this story if you believe in second chances. Comment forgiveness if you've ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love. Or write too late if you think some things can't be fixed. Every response matters to me. The day came quietly, without any grand announcement or balloons or speeches. That's how real change always comes. Soft, steady, almost shy. It was a Friday afternoon. The kind where the heat settles heavy on the porch railings and even the bees seem too tired to buzz. I was sitting in my favorite chair with a glass of sweet tea, watching the street shimmer in the sun, when Jason pulled up in his beat-up old truck. No music blasting. No girlfriend filming. Just him, a duffel bag in the passenger seat, and a small bouquet of flowers clutched awkwardly in his hand. He walked up the steps slow, like he wasn't sure if he belonged. I set my tea down and waited. When he reached the top, he handed me the flowers without a word. I took them, inhaled the faint scent of daisies and sunflowers, and nodded for him to sit. He did. We sat there for a long time, neither one of us rushing the moment. Finally he spoke. I got a promotion. I looked at him sideways. At the hardware store? He smiled. Yeah. Floor supervisor. Better hours. Little raise. I nodded, sipping my tea. That's good. He rubbed his hands together nervously. And I finished paying off the last of what I owed you. I nodded again, still calm, still measured. I know, I said. I counted every dollar. He smiled at that. A real smile. Not the forced kind he used to wear like armor. And he added, voice dropping to something almost vulnerable, I enrolled in night classes. Business management. Figured if I'm going to build something, I ought to know how to run it right. That surprised me. Not because he wasn't smart enough. He always had been. But because it was the first time he'd talked about building without flashing it to the world first. I reached under my chair and pulled out a small folder. He looked at it confused. I held it out to him. He took it slowly, hands trembling just a little. Inside was the deed to the house. Signed. Notarized. Final. His name printed clean and proud on the line next to mine. His eyes widened as he read it. He looked up at me like he couldn't quite believe it was real. Grandma, I raised a hand to stop him. This isn't a gift, I said. This is a responsibility. He nodded quickly, blinking fast. You earned it, I said. Piece by piece. Day by day. Not with money. With effort. With respect. He swallowed hard. I'm not giving it to the boy who stole from me, I said. I'm giving it to the man who made it right. He set the folder carefully on the porch table like it was made of glass. Lean forward. I'm never going to forget this, he said. Never. You better not, I said, smiling gently. He chuckled, wiping at his eyes with the heel of his hand. We sat there a while longer, watching the sun start to sink behind the rooftops. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just good. Real good. Later, after he'd left, I stood on the porch alone and looked down the street. Neighbors were starting to put up fall decorations. Little kids were riding bikes with training wheels. Someone's grill was smoking 3 houses down. Life moving on. And in the middle of all that ordinary beauty stood my grandson's house. Our house. Not just a symbol of what was taken, but of what was rebuilt. He didn't move in right away. Said he wanted to save up for furniture. Wanted to fix the place up right before showing it off. Said he wasn't rushing anymore. Good. Neither was I. Because some things, the best things, aren't supposed to come easy. They're supposed to come slow and hard and honest. That house would stand a long time. Longer than the likes and the followers and the fake friends. Longer than the shame. Longer than the anger. It would stand as a reminder of a boy who learned the difference between pretending to win and truly earning something that mattered. And of a grandmother who loved him enough to let him fall. And loved him even more to make sure he learned how to stand back up on his own. One evening, a few weeks later, Jason came by with a key. Handed it to me with a grin. Spare key, he said. For emergencies. And Sunday dinners. I laughed, tucked it into my apron pocket, and hugged him tight. It was the first time in a long while I'd hugged him without reservation. Without that little tremor of hurt lingering between us. He wasn't the boy I'd raised anymore. He was something better. A man who knew the value of trust. Of hard work. Of family. And if he ever forgot again? Well, he knew where to find me. Right here on this porch. With a pitcher of sweet tea and a heart that was always willing to start over. As long as he remembered how to knock on the door and ask first. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Subscribe for more stories about real life, real lessons, and the kind of love that teaches as much as it forgives. Comment, family, if you know what it means to love someone through their mistakes. And remember, just because you're family doesn't mean you're entitled to take. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is a lesson they'll never forget. Thank you for listening to my story. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, know that somewhere out there, an old woman is sitting on her porch, proud of the hard choices she made. Proud of the grandson who finally learned. And grateful for every single one of you who understands that love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. God bless.